Now, Ved Jainji is with us. We would like to listen him, Ved Jainji, on the budget. For the formal introduction, I invite Akshay Kila for the introduction of Ved
we can
Jainji.
avoid. I think everybody knows me. We can avoid this. Just to introduce.
Sir, it is a 1 minute only, sir. Please, sir, already cassette is there. There is only 1 minute, sir. Please, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mohan Uncle, for the opportunity. C.A. Ved Jainji has been a man of prudence and intelligence since birth. He was a rank holder in both his CA inter as well as CA final examinations. A triple bachelor's degree holder with bachelor's in science, bachelor's of art and commerce, and bachelor's of law. He has been a fellow member of ICAI for 3 decades now. He was elected to the Central Council of ICAI for the first time in the year 2004. In 2007, he was elected as the Vice President of ICAI and was further elevated to the position of President of ICAI in the year 2008. His integrity, zeal, commitment towards the profession and society has been recognized and appreciated by the Government of India. The Satyam episode happened during his tenure of presidency. He was instrumental in handling the biggest ever fraud in the corporate sector and working out the plan of revival of the Satyam and the 2 associated companies closely with the Government of India. On Corporate Forum, he has been the founder board member of Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, set up by MCA Government of India. Mr. Ved Jainji is a prolific writer with command in Hindi, English, French, Urdu, and Punjabi. He has authored many books on direct taxes and regularly contributes various articles in journals and different newspapers. He frequently participates in various television debates and programs on economic, finance, and tax issues. Presently, he is an independent director on the board of DLF Limited, Inventia Healthcare Limited, and is also a chairman of MCX Clearing Corporation Limited. I would like to welcome C.A. Ved Jainji with a big round of applause. Over to you, Ved Jain. Thank you.
Thank you, Akshay. Thank you for the introductions and compliments while reading out my profile. Before I start my deliberation, may I request Mohanji just to update me? Girishji was speaking before me. The issues and the point which he has covered, so there may not be any duplication. Unmute Mohanji, if you can just update me on that issue so that I can cover up those points which Ahuja ji would not have touched upon.
Sir, Ahuja ji has taken a few points, no doubt, but मेरा ख्याल Ahuja ji तो आपको पता है ना बहुत सारे प्रोग्राम करने होते हैं तो आप मेरा ख्याल उन्हीं प्रोग्राम को थोड़ा elaborate करोगे. You take your own time and elaborate all the programs which points which you like to.
Only one thing is I think the viewers should have the patience. I can see how many.
No problem, sir. Viewers always like to listen to you, sir.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, friends. Now the budget is almost 30 hours old. I was presented at 11 o'clock and I finished at 1 o'clock, and now it's more than 6 o'clock, 6:30. So it is almost 30 hours. We had the pleasure and the privilege of listening to the Honorable Finance Minister yesterday when she was speaking for about 2 hours. Then we had the privilege of going through the various electronic media debate yesterday. And today we have the privilege of going to the newspaper, print media. As I see the budget, you have a lot of anxiety before the budget is presented. And thereafter, electronic media has a full aga go about it. Capital market is booming like anything. Mohanji, आपको थोड़ा सा mute करा, sorry. And then capital market is going up like anything and has given a thumbs up to the finance minister. And I see in the recent years, I believe I have been talking and speaking at the various budget every year. Maybe I think I was just counting almost more than 25 years I have been speaking on the budget. I've seen this is one of the budget which can be a game changer for India. We all being chartered accountant, I believe many of you would have heard this other deliberation. For a minute or two, I would like to touch upon the overall economics of the budget. We as an accountant, particularly we understand a number, we must try to appreciate on that point. Look, this year, this budget has been, as you see, was in difficult circumstances. There was a corona and COVID, a post-2020 budget. Revenue was under a challenge. Expenditure has gone up. With the result, the finance minister has to find out ways and means how to mop up the resources. And one of the ways was to cut down the expenditure so that the receipts are not there. But she has taken a very, very bold step in the year 2021. Just for the sake of understanding, I will just share the number. when she presented the budget for the year 20 in the February 20, she had made an estimate that country will be spending about 30 lakh odd crore in the financial year 2021, out of which roughly 22 lakh will be coming out of the revenue. That means a receipt, revenue receipt, which we call taxes and other receipts, etc., dividend, etc. And roughly 7,97,000, 8 lakh crore was to be borrowed. That was the budget which was presented at the time. Now she has given the revised estimate, whereby the total expenditure is supposed to be 34 lakh crore. And out of which the revenue receipt, which was supposed to be 22 lakh crore, has gone down to 16 lakh crore. With the result, 18 lakh crore is the borrowing which she has resorted to, meaning thereby country for the financial year 2021 of an expenditure of 34 crore, 18 lakh crore will be financed by raising loans, etc., borrowing, etc. This shows the courage, I believe, the bold step which the finance minister has taken, I believe the government has taken, etc. In line with that same, the next year budget is also projected to be somewhere 34 lakh odd crore. This year 34 lakh 50,000 and next year 34 lakh 97,000 something like crore. And again, revenue receipts are going up from 16 lakh to 18 lakh crore only. And 2 lakh crore rupees is coming additionally out of this LIC and other disinvestment. And 14 lakh crore will be the borrowing which the government will resort to. Now this gives again how much propulsion the economy will get. All that government need to do is that this expenditure is actually incurred, and it is incurred for the purpose for it is meant, and as expeditiously as it can be possible. If this is done in the financial year 21-22, there is no reason why not the economy will bounce back like anything. And if our economy bounce back and the GDP number comes back, all this matter of fiscal deficit will automatically go. As we all accountant can understand, if we need to calculate percentage on 180, the percentage will be higher, but I need to calculate the percentage on 200, it will go down. And still, if the percentage is to be counted on 220, the percentage will further go down. So this year fiscal deficit has gone down because our overall GDP, which was supposed to be 2 lakh 24 crore, something like that, lakh crore, has gone down to 1 lakh 94 lakh crore, and next year it is projected to be back at 2 lakh 20,000 lakh crore. So if that happens, then India will be, I think, the fastest growing economy of the world, and we will be demonstrating to the world. In fact, the pandemic, the way the Indian government and we have handled it has been a moral booster, I think, and as a role model for the whole of the world. Now, we are here on the issue of the what we call taxes. One of the compliment to the finance minister is, despite everyone being reconciled to the fact that there will be some increase in tax, maybe a COVID tax, maybe a surcharge, maybe a cess, maybe a wealth tax or a state duty, the finance minister has taken a bold step not to incur and tinker with any tax. So whatever the ready reckoner you have been using for the last financial year 2021 will be the ready reckoner for the financial year 21-22. All your software for computing income tax and surcharge, etc., filing return will be exactly the same, because there is no change in the tax rate of the either of the individual or an HCF or a AOP or of a partnership firm, cooperative society. All you can use the same software, same technology on the other hand on the issue. So there is no change. Now the finance minister could have said, since I am not making any change in tax rates, I am not proposing any change in the Income Tax Act also. But that she didn't do it, knowing fully well that Mohan Mittal ji, R.A. Kila ji, Akshay ji, and all they have organized various programs. And if she does not make any amendment, what will happen to a program like this? What Girish Ahuja ji will speak and what I will speak here, because there is no amendment. Now we cannot say any change in tax rate. So she made sure that I make so many amendments. So speaker like me, Ahuja ji, can speak for 1 hour, 2 hours and keep you engaged. And you also have committed to the family, no, not on 2nd February, I need to go to the seminar, I need to listen to the seminar. So you can listen and hear what has happened. And there are structural changes. There are changes which will change I think, the way the assessment and appeals are being done, the timeline, everything. I think that's going to be changed on this issue. Since Ahuja ji has spoken before me, some of the points which I will be raising may get repeated. but I will suggest a request that in case it is so, you may just bear with me. As we see, I will start with the issue. When tax rate has not been changed, how an income of an individual will get affected. I am talking of an individual from the perspective of a person who is a salaried employee. If he is a salaried employee, where his income will get affected? No change in tax rate, no change in other deduction, etc. Only thing that will happen to him, which I understand will be the three things. One, the LTC, which he has been claiming while going actually availing because of the COVID, he could not go. And the finance minister made an announcement in the month of October, yes, in case you get LTC substituted by increasing expenditure on GST paid, that deduction will be allowed. So section, what we get 10(5) is being amended, whereby exemption is given in respect of the leave travel concession. That exemption will be available in case instead of this leave travel concession, you incur an expenditure 3 times of that expenditure on purchasing goods where GST rate is more 12% or more. So the amendment has been proposed in section 10(5), which was earlier part of the announcement which the finance minister has made. Now it is being statutory recognition has been given under section 10(5). This is only for 1 year. That is assessment year 21-22, this current year financial year. This exemption will be available. You need not travel. You incur the expenditure 12% plus, and 1/3 of such expenditure subject to 36,000 rupees per family member will be eligible for exemption under section 10(5). This is the only thing, and expenditure need to be incurred before 31st March 21. Thereafter, this reduction will not be available. Reasons are obvious, because during this period, travel was down. So she said you make an alternative purchase. But if this type of exemption is allowed in subsequent year, some purchases may happen, but the travel, aviation, and hospitality industry will suffer. Because if the employee is given a benefit of alternative choice of making purchases instead of travel, so who will travel then? So people that keeping in that mind, this exemption has not been continued for the next year, and it is only for this year this has been given. Another exemption which is being withdrawn is of contribution to the Provident Fund. We all know that when we contribute to Provident Fund up to in ATC, deduction up to 1,50,000 rupees is allowed under ATC. However, the interest which is earned on the deposit which we make every year in PF is exempt fully, because the last age under section 10, 11, and 12, whatever you get on maturity from the Provident Fund is fully exempt, in not only your contribution, employer contribution, but also the interest or other income which accrues to such fund. Now, with this result, there were many high salaried employees which were contributing substantial amount to the PF, because 10, 11, and 10, 12 does not put a restriction on that issue. And those employees, particularly director or senior executive, which were earning salary of 1 crore, 2 crore. So 12% of that would have mean employee contribution of 12 lakh or 15 lakh or 18 lakh rupees. Now the law is being amended that henceforth any further contribution, earlier contribution will not be hit. Interest on that up to 2,50,000 rupees. Any interest on the contribution up to 2,50,000 rupees per year will be eligible for exemption. Beyond that, whatever interest get credited, that interest will be liable for taxation in the hands of the employee. So meaning thereby, this is a restriction which has been put on that purpose, and this is the exemption which is being withdrawn from the employee on that part. So these are the changes which I believe are going to affect the employee, and there is no other change which will affect the employee. There are two issues which I will touch upon about the what we call so-called senior citizens, which have been given certain exemption from the, filing return, and some other benefit which has been given. I will talk to you later on in time permitting. I have been, as I told earlier, I have been speaking on the budget day after the finance bill year after year. And one experience which I get every year, government always tinker with the provision of the charitable trust. Something is fancy to the, I think, the lawmaker. They believe that unless they make some amendment or changes in the NGOs and the way it is handled, the budget will not be complete. And this year is also not an exception. Some of my old colleagues who are, I think, probably here, they will, I think they will recall that there used to be a section 10 subsection 22, whereby an exemption was given to educational institutions solely existing for educational purposes and not for profit. A complete exemption was there, and there was no restriction whatsoever. School and college, whatsoever you run, and that section was abolished. a new section 1023C was introduced, whereby it was provided that in case you have an education institution and if your gross receipt do not exceed 1 crore rupees, then that exemption of 1020 in the form of 1022 will be available fully, nothing to be done. Whatever you do, so long you carry out educational activity and not for profit, it will be exempt. Same exemption was available for the hospitals, medical, etc., up to 1 crore rupees. But beyond 1 crore rupees, law was amended that you have to get a prior approval of the DG exemption, approval, and then also there were restriction, 85 amount to be spent, amount to be kept, invested, etc. Now this threshold is being increased from 1 crore rupees to 5 crore. Now this will be a big benefit to, I believe, to the small educational school institutions, schools and colleges. You can just form a trust, etc., run a school, so long the total receipt, it do not exceed 5 crore rupees. No registration, no exemption, nothing will be required under section 1023C. No law will be applicable, income will be exempt absolutely, because 1023C clause 3AD makes an exemption. Similarly, if a dispensary or hospital is run where the total receipt is up to 5 crore rupees, that will also be exempt. Beyond 5 crore, the existing provision will continue to apply to seek approval, etc., from the DG, etc., on this issue. But there are 3 other changes which need to be noted and which need to be taken care of. The first change is that corpus donation which we receive is exempt. We know under section 1023C there is a specific exemption that any person who gives a voluntary contribution with a specific direction, that this will form part of the corpus. Now that is exempt, but there is no obligation how do you spend that amount and how do you keep that amount. Similarly, under section 11(1)(d) of the Income Tax Act, if I do 11(1)(a) talks about the expenditure which you incur for charitable purpose, but 11(1)(d) says that whatever voluntary contribution you receive with regard to the direction that it form part of the corpus will be fully exempt. Now, amendment has been made that such voluntary contribution forming part of the corpus need to be invested in the prescribed form, which is under section 11(5), mainly bank deposit, etc., and in a bank separate account. And anything utilized out of this will not be considered as an application toward charitable purposes. Meaning thereby you received a contribution of 1 crore rupees from a gentleman and he said that this is form a corpus, and then out of 1 crore rupees, 40 lakh rupees you utilize for the purpose of some purchasing of some land, etc., etc., which is not putting. Now you cannot say that 40 lakh I have utilized for charitable purposes, because this is the amount which has been used from the corpus. It will be considered to be utilized towards charitable purpose when in subsequent year you earn income and you pay back the corpus, and corpus amount again bring back come to 1 crore rupees. Same restriction is being put on loan. Now as on date, in case I take a loan and buy a land or a machinery or something like this, this is considered to be application and it is counted toward 85%. But loan will also not be counted. However, whenever you will repay the loan along with the interest also, whenever you make the payment actual, that will be considered as an application. You have taken a loan, say in the year 21, 50 lakh rupees, that, and you have applied for purchasing something like that, is not an application. But next year that loan has been repaid, say 10 lakh rupees along with interest of 1 lakh rupees, then 11 lakh rupees will be considered to be an application of income. And the third change which has been made with the is that sometimes there is a mismatch that in 1 year you incur expenditure more than your income. And since you have incurred expenditure more than income, so next year you will like to carry forward because the income next year may go down. Now the enactment has been made that such carry forward will not be allowed. Each year will be seen independently. If you have an expenditure of 11 lakh, income of 10 lakh, 1 lakh is excess, you are fine, thank you. Next year you have an income of say 10 lakh rupees, expenditure of 7 lakh rupees. You cannot say last year I have incurred excess expenditure 1 lakh, you adjust it, it will not be allowed. This is going to create a problem, a lot of problem for the NGOs, particularly those NGOs which carry out activities, say in the month of March and April. There's a program, some Bhandara or some program is organized where the expenditure is incurred on a particular day, 28th March or 29th March, and receipts coming on that account later on also. So sometime because 31st March is only for tax purposes, not for other purposes. So in that view, I believe this provision may be harsh. because when we allow an income which you have earned this year to be incurred in the next year, because there is a special clause 11.2, I know the view that similar provision should have been created in 11.2 also explanation, that in case you have incurred an expenditure which you intend that income will come in subsequent year, you should be given a permission to utilize that expenditure in the next year and appropriate in the next year. So these are the changes which have been made so far, I believe, charitable trust is concerned. As regard the exemption which are available, no tinkering with the provision. Existing exemption which were ending up because of the sunset clause have been extended. One was the interest on the affordable housing of a flat up to 45 lakh rupees, which is 1,50,000 under Section 80 EEA, which was supposed to expire in case a flat is purchased before 31st March 2021, is being extended by 1 year. Similarly, affordable housing exemption, which was for the developer in respect of project approved before 31st March 2021, is being extended by 1 year. Scope is being expanded for not only for development of affordable housing, also for development of rental affordable housing. The government want the developers should develop more and more housing for migrant labor, and that purpose they are interested in doing this. So, and this can be a game changer, as I see government owns very big land, and if government can lease out those land to the developer for making houses for affordable housing for migrant labor, etc., which can be rented out to the employer, an employer can have the their labor house therein, paying rent therein. I believe it can be a game changer. So life of the migrant labor will also improve. Common facilities like bathroom, toilet, hygiene, medical, sports, and other facilities can also be provided therein, because by and large MSME sector do not have the wherewithal to provide residential apartment, etc., to the employees. So these type of people can definitely help on that part. So these are the few changes. And similarly for startup, no budget will be complete unless the finance minister touch up and talk about the startup. So startup also has been given an extended period of 1 year for that purpose of starting the various exemption now. Having said so, now I come to few issues which are regarding the business income part. Goodwill was one of the issues which was, I think, disturbing the income tax department. They were concerned about that whenever there has been a slum sale or something like this, so why the goodwill should be eligible for depreciation. So now taking cue from that, now goodwill will not be eligible for depreciation. It will continue to be a capital asset. There is no issue about that. And the nomenclature of goodwill will be just like land. In case you have a land, on land you do not get a depreciation. So similarly on goodwill you will not get any depreciation. It will continue to be capital asset. And wherever you have acquired by making payment for a goodwill, and when you sell it off, you will get a deduction of the same as a capital gain or whatever it work it out. However, where you have self-generated or you have made a valuation yourself without making actual payment, that will not be considered for any purpose. That will have to be ignored for all that purpose. Government view is goodwill, like the land, will never get depreciated. It will get only appreciated. I believe this may not be a correct interpretation. Land may not get depreciated, but goodwill over a period, depending how you work, how the competition is, how your quality is, and how the new technology have developed, it may change and goodwill valuation may be different. And the recent modern in electronics are few examples where people do develop, like Nokia was a leader in the mobile phone when it came in late 90s, and today Nokia stand nowhere in the mobile phone. Today, I believe Samsung and Apple are the leaders and they may have enjoyed very goodwill, but tomorrow there can be a challenge, a new model or a new technology get developed and you find. Similarly, video recorder, VC recorder, tape recorder, they have lost all significance. So those companies may be having some goodwill, etc. So they will lose that credibility in itself. Anyhow, that's for the understanding. So depreciation will not be allowed on goodwill, and it will be considered capital asset. Corresponding, I'm just rushing a little fast. If you later on, if time permits, some question I can take it on. But that corresponding amendment have been made in section 48, section 50, and other section to provide that how to compute capital gain on that purpose. So I'm not touching up on that issue. Another, I believe, disturbing amendment is regarding PF and ESI, section 36(1)(5)(a). Provide that whenever you deduct any contribution from the employees on account of PF or ESI, etc., that is considered to be income. But 36(1)(5) says when you make payment, then it is eligible for deduction. And it also says eligible for deduction when you have made the payment before the due date. Now, 43B was also the same provision. 43B was applicable for employer contribution and 36(1)(5)A was applicable for employee contribution. 43B stood amended where the government said that no employer contribution will be eligible for deduction in case you make the payment before the due date of filing the return. Same interpretation was being taken up by the court, including the Supreme Court. We have a judgment from the Delhi High Court also, and we have a various judgment. Though one of the judgment Delhi High Court was against, but that was in ignorance of the earlier judgment of the Emil Laboratories, if I am correct on that part. But now the government has made an amendment that in order to ensure labor welfare, those employers which make the payment late in case of PF and ESI, this deduction will not be allowed. And it is a clarificatory amendment which has been stated. So meaning thereby for the current financial year also, that is assessment year 21-22, financial year 2021 also, this exemption will not be available. And for earlier years also, there can be a challenge on that part. I am of the view, frankly, this amendment was not required. Even if it was required to encourage payment, what should have been done is that in case payment is made by few days late or before the due date of filing or before the close of the accounting year, that deduction should be allowed. If you disallow it permanently, you are encouraging default, because default may happen on 15th March or 15th April or 15th May. Maybe my employees leave, maybe accountant is not available, some check signing authority is not available, or fund got frozen, or my check which my buyer has given has got bounced, and so my ESI check is also bound. That eventuality will always be there. And if you don't allow me, now I will perpetuate. I will not make payment later on also. And then ESI, PF Act have enough provision to handle in case of a default. So why we should use income tax for artificially increasing the income and for a welfare which is meant under the other law? Let the other law take care of that provision. I could not make it out. That's the issue. Another amendment which may be relevant was which the finance minister announced on 12th of November, a concession to boost the real estate, that in case a flat owner or a developer has a flat and he allots a flat to a buyer for the first time, and this allotment is made between 12th November to 30th June 2021, and the rate at which he sells this flat, it can be less than 20% in the circle rate. So that amendment is now being proposed because that was a notification only announcement by amending section 43CA, whereby in case a developer sells a flat which is less than circle rate and difference is treated to be the income. Under the existing law, 10% variation is allowed, but it is a special window of 20% with a condition it should be a new allotment between 12th January and November to 30th June, and the value should not exceed rupees 2 crore. The consideration should not exceed. So this is an exemption which has been given. It will be up to 30th June 2021. Corresponding amendment has been made in section 56 to 10, whereby the same exemption that a deduction will also be that income, no addition will be made of 20% variation in the hand of the buyer of the flat also. That's the exemption which has been given on that part. Two important amendment has been made in respect in the capital gain, and those may be relevant in case you have on the issue. When you are a partner in a firm, whatever profit you receive from the partnership is eligible for exemption. It is not chargeable to tax. Now, an issue as a reason where a partner, instead of taking away the capital from the firm, takes away some assets of the firm. So there have been few decisions where they said where they take away the asset, that income is not chargeable tax. Now the act is being amended, section 45(4), where a capital asset is being given to the retiring partner or at a time of dissolution, the fair market value of that asset will be computed, and whatever is the amount over and above the capital account of the partner, the difference will be deemed to be a capital gain in the hand of the partnership firm, and partnership firm will be required to pay capital gain tax on that. Similarly, when a partner retires, instead of taking an asset, he takes the money over and above the money which is standing to his capital account, but the difference will be treated as a capital gain in the hands of the partnership firm, since it will be assumed what is being given over and above the firm, his capital account, is because of the value of the asset in the firm going up. So this will be treated as a capital gain, and the person will be required to, and the firm will be required to pay capital gain tax. And corresponding amendment has been made that the values so considered will be added to the cost of acquisition under section 48 also. So that is the change which has been affected. Now, some of the changes which affect the profession. 44 AB, the tax audit threshold is being increased from 5 crore to 10 crore. And this will be applicable for the current assessment year 21-22, the year ending 31st March 21. And the tax audit will not be required in case the transaction are more than the other than cash of the prescribed threshold limit. So up to 10 crore rupees, no audit will be required. Similarly, for a professional firm, the presumptive model will not be applicable and allowable in case of LLP. Partnership firm, individual will be eligible, but not the LLP model will not be allowed on that part of it. Now coming to some of the provision of return filing, etc., and then TDS, and we wind up. There have been drastic changes which have been made regarding the return filing, income escaping assessment, and such cases. So first case is return filing. 139(1), the due date is 31st July, 31st October, and 30th November. In Goa, I think when a person is a partner, he earns an income. That income does not belong to the individual himself. That income belongs to himself and his spouse. So now the amendment is being made that due date of filing return will not be that of partner also, but of the spouse also. Both will stand extended and will be linked with the partnership form. Similarly, now when a partner is required to file return, the due date is linked with the due date of the firm. And that due date of the link of the firm is linked with the audit and the tax audit or TP audit. But domestic or transaction audit is not covered and extended period is not allowed. So that way 139(1) is being amended to provide that in case of a partner of a firm, where the firm is required to get an audit done of the TP under domestic transaction law, then the due date of filing the return in case of such partner will be 30th November and extended date will be available. Another is, now when you file the return, you can file the return under 139 due date, but in case you have not filed the return, 139(4) earlier used to provide 2-year period, which was reduced to 1 year, and last year it was reduced to the end of the assessment year. This budget has gone a step further, 3 months further have been reduced. Now the due date of filing return will be normal, but beyond 31st December, no return can be filed. This is very important. Now the due date will be 31st July, 31st October, 30th November, and after 31st December, you cannot file the return. As we cannot file the return now today of 1920 because that date has gone. Similarly, for the return 21-22, the return will be filed on 31st July, 30th October, 30th November, and beyond 31st December, no return can be filed at all under any circumstances. This is I think the biggest change which is there. Similarly, return cannot be revised beyond 31st December. You file the return on 30th November and revision can be happen 31st December. Beyond that, there will be no revision. Government saying nothing doing on this issue. Corresponding amendment department is making on itself. Notice under section 143(2) for scrutiny assessment can also not be issued after a period of 3 months from the end of the financial year. Now, whatever the returns you have filed now in November, December, or January, or on 15th February, scrutiny notice can be issued only up to 30th June 2021 for financial year 2021 on this. Further, assessment has to be completed within 9 months from the end of the assessment year. And this will be applicable for assessment year 21-22. So for the return which you are filing now on 15th December, notice can be issued under 143(2) by 30th June 2021. Under the existing law, this assessment will be made up to 31st March 2022. But next year, when you file the return of assessment year 21-22, which will be filed in July, October, or November, notice under section 143(2) can be issued up to 30th June 2022, and assessment will be in your hand by 31st December 2022. These are the changes which have been made, and this is a drastic change regarding the filing of return, revision of return 143, and completion of assessment. Having said so, the procedure for reopening of the assessment, search and survey assessment is being changed. Now, as on date, we know in case of a search, assessment is framed under section 153A, and in case a material is found belonging to other person, then it is 153C. Now, 153A, 153C will stand abolished. No assessment will be made in the case where the search is carried out after 31st, then from 1st April 2021 onward. In all these cases, 3 assessment year will be reopened preceding the year in which the search has been carried out. This will be automatic. So period of reopening will get reduced from 6 to 3 years. and assessment will be reframed on that part. Similarly, period for reopening of the assessment under section 147, 148 is being reduced from 6 years to 3 years. However, where income escaping assessment is 50 lakh rupees or more and which is represented by way of an asset, and similarly in a case of a search where a material or document is found which indicate that income above 50 lakh rupees has escaped earlier, then this period of 3 years will get extended to 10 years. The only condition is that the amount should be more than 50 lakh rupees or more. And this has to be examined on year-to-year basis for the purpose of 148. Secondly, the procedure for how the assessment 148 has to be done. Now, reasons are not required to be recorded. And this reassessment will be done on the basis of what we call intelligent computer, they say risk management strategy of the CBDT, where computer intelligence will work out, or where the CAG has pointed out in the audit of the assessment, if some mistake has happened, for that purpose, reassessment can be done. In survey cases also now 3 years will get reopened automatically. Presently in survey cases, earlier assessment do not get reopened automatically. It is only the 148. But now in survey cases, this will get automatically reopened. Interesting point which I was noticing is that under 148 now, in case of a foreign assets, etc., black money, etc., 16-year period is allowed to be reopened. There is no such provision now in the new provision. And now 16-year will not be, it will be 3 and 10 years only. But I believe this is intentional, because whenever a foreign asset is found now, it is not the Income Tax Act, it is the Black Money Act under which the assessment is carried out. And if it is assessment is carried out under the Black Money Act, so Black Money Act has no time limitation, because the law there says in the year in which the assessing officer issues the notice, that is the year in which it is deemed to the income and the assets belonging to. So there is no limitation. Even 1950 or 1970, you have a foreign bank account which come to the knowledge of assessing officer, he can assess you in 21, 22. That's a change which has been affected on that part. So these are the changes which on the assessment part, and I just skipped the looking time. Coming to the TDS provision, 2 important changes to be noticed. Now, one is regarding the dividend income, which is exempt up to 5,000 rupees, no TDS required. But when you make payment to some investment trust, etc., that exemption will also not be required. Secondly, dividend now will not be considered as a regular income for the purpose of advance tax. Like capital gain, advance tax is payable only after the capital gain has arisen. Similarly, dividend income accrual arises on declaration distribution. The day you come to know that dividend is going to be declared, thereafter, whatever the due date of the advance tax, you have to pay the advance tax on the dividend, because you don't know how much dividend income will come. So that's why 234A provision is, or 234C provision are being amended. Like capital gain, dividend will be considered therein only. Now, another change which has a far-reaching implication is regarding the TDS on purchase of goods. You will all recall last year under section 206C, 1H section was introduced. There was a TCS on sale of goods, meaning thereby when I receive payment of more than 50 lakh rupees a year from a person and my turnover is more than 10 crore, I was supposed to receive a 0.1 tax TCS. Now, on the contrary, now the law says 194Q is a new provision. If my turnover is more than 10 crore in the preceding year, and if I make a sale of a person of 50 lakh or more during the year, I need to deduct 0.1% when I make purchase, when I make purchase, I need to deduct 0.1% of the TDS on that part. And this liability to deduct TDS and deposit will arise on the, when I receive the bill, credit the bill, or make the payment, whichever is earlier. So meaning thereby, even for purchase of goods from a person of 50 lakh or more during the year, I need to deduct TDS. And since TDS has been deducted in this, then TCS will not be applicable. So now you have to find out which way you will fall. If you are making purchases from a person and to whom we are making more 50 lakh and your turnover is more than 1 crore, or for then 10 crore, then you need to deduct TDS while making payment to that person. Since you have deducted TDS, the other person will be free from deducting the TCS. These are the changes which have been made TCS. Another small relief has been given to the senior citizen above 75 years of age during the year, at any time during the year. They need not file the return if they have a pension income and income from a single bank account. I believe this is going to be practically not a single case, because that gentleman, that senior citizen should have own pension income firstly, and have only one bank account, and that too in the same bank account where pension is there. I don't feel that a person getting pension can be bogged down to have only one bank account. But the law has been amended, 194 P section has been introduced. In such case, the bank will deduct TDS on interest not at the rate of 10% of 194A, but under 194 P by including interest income as a regular income and pension income, compute tax, deduct tax, and the return is not required to be filed in such cases. That is the law which has been worked out. There are some other provisions which I am skipping on TDS, etc. But one thing I will just say, now settlement commission has been abolished. Is not being abolished, has been abolished from 1st February 2021. All applications which have been filed before 1st February 2021, they shall be dealt by a new interim board which is being set up, and settlement commission member, nothing will happen. All applications are henceforth, in all other matter, no application can be filed. This is going to create a lot of problem where such cases are going on and people were thinking of filing an application for settlement. Now they cannot file. Instead thereof, there is a dispute resolution committee is being constituted. But in that committee, only that case where return income is 50 lakh or less and dispute is 10 lakh rupees less, that can only go. It's a contradiction to the settlement commission and this committee. In settlement commission, the minimum requirement by the small cases could not go. Only when you have additional tax liability of 3 lakh or 10 lakh, only then you could have gone. Here on the contrary, in case your dispute is 10 lakh or less, then only you can go to DRC and not otherwise. And that's a change which has been made. Similarly, authority for advance ruling is being abolished, and instead thereof board of advance ruling is being constituted. Another power is being given of attachment in case of fake invoices where penalty is to be levied. Their interim order by, under 281, and that attachment order can be invoked that purpose. These are the few changes, I believe, which I could talk about and discuss looking at time constraint on that part. But I believe the way some of the structural changes have been carried out, this goes contrary to the overall idea of reducing litigation. We brought Vivad Se Vishwas to reduce litigation. Settlement was also one of the way to reduce litigation. But by not doing this, by abolishing settlement commission, I believe we are putting the taxpayer and the administration to a long journey of fighting it out of litigation. Another buzzword has become faceless. We had faceless assessment, we had faceless appeal, faceless penalty, and what we are now seeing, faceless tribunal. I could not make out what is the meaning of faceless. I can't see the face of assessing officer, but assessing officer can definitely see my face. He knows who I am. CIT appeal also knows. Tribunal will also know who I am, but I cannot see his face. I am still baffled at why it is so being promoted without being experimented. I'm not working on this issue, because what you can convince through paper, you can do much better by talking personally. लोग गुहार लगाते हैं किसी के बाहर जाके दुआ मक्का का, वो तो पर्सनली लगाते हैं. चिट्ठी लिख के गुहार नहीं काम करती बहुत जगह से, और लेटर लिख के लोग सब बात समझ जाएं तो फिर इलेक्शन की रैली करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. फिर मंदिर में जाके किसी महात्मा का प्रचार सुनने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. क्यों जाके प्रचार सुनते हैं? शास्त्रों में बहुत कुछ लिखा हुआ है. इलेक्शन पार्टी के मैनिफेस्टो में बहुत कुछ लिखा हुआ है, और फिर भी हम ये कहते हैं नहीं, ये नहीं पढ़ने की जरूरत, हम जाके सुनेंगे, वो कहते हैं रैली करेंगे. तो व्हाई नॉट दैट इज फेसलेस. तो फेसलेस का मतलब ये नहीं है कि भाई आप जब तक सुन के आपकी टोन टेनर जिस ढंग से समझाया, क्या समझ में आया, क्या नहीं आया, क्या सवाल होंगे, क्या जवाब होंगे. आई कैन अंडरस्टैंड यू से कि भाई आप चाहते हैं, आप नहीं आना चाहते, आप भेज दीजिए, हम कंसीडर कर लेंगे. आपके खिलाफ कोई एडवर्स व्यू आएगा तो हम आपको कहेंगे कि ऐसा व्यू बन रहा है. फिर आपसे पूछेंगे कि भाई आप अगर इसका जवाब देके मिलना चाहेंगे या वीडियो पे करना चाहेंगे. आप वीडियो पे आएंगे तो वीसी कॉन्फ्रेंस कर लीजिए, हम उसमें कर लेंगे. वहां भी आपको लगता है नहीं मुझे आके पर्सनली सेटिस्फाई करना है. प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नेचुरल जस्टिस से कि फिजिकल मीटिंग इज ऑलवेज एंड व्हेन यू एबल टू एग्री, एंड वन मस्ट हैव ए कॉन्फिडेंस इन द सिस्टम. I can recall an old English movie, which was a hilarious movie, humor back. Don't raise the bridge, lower the river. एक रिवर के नीचे से शिप को निकलना है और पता लगा कि जो ब्रिज ऊपर है वो तंग कर रहा है, तो बोले ये ब्रिज नहीं हटेगा, नीचे से नदी को खोद देते हैं, उससे रिवर निकल जाएगा. वही किया जा रहा है फेसलेस में. हम ये समझ रहे हैं कि हमारे जो इंस्टीट्यूशन है हमारा उसमें ट्रस्ट नहीं है, कहीं ना कहीं इंटेग्रिटी है, ऑनेस्टी के सवाल आ रहे हैं। उसको मीट आउट करने के लिए हमने सोचा क्या तरीका कि भाई हम क्या करते हैं यार, इसकी हियरिंग ही बंद कर देते हैं। एंड प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नेचुरल जस्टिस हियरिंग, जो हम समझते हैं कि जो आप बोल के कम्युनिकेट कर सकते हैं वो कभी भी आप लिख के नहीं कर सकते। मैं हर साल बजट की किताब छापता हूँ, अगर मैं आपको किताब लिखकर भेज दूं और आप उसे पढ़कर समझ लें तो फिर मेरे बोलने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है उसके बारे में। जो जिस ढंग से बोल के समझाया जाता है, क्योंकि जब आप बोल रहे होते हैं तो आप सामने वाले को समझ देख रहे होते हैं, आपको लगा जो मैंने पॉइंट बोला नहीं समझ में आया तो रिपीट करते हैं, आपको लगा ये पॉइंट सामने वाले के लिए रेलिवेंट नहीं है तो आप उसको इग्नोर करके चलते हैं कि इसको जल्दी से स्किप करके तेजी से लाया जाए। अभी भी मैंने लेक्चर में बहुत सारे पॉइंट वो कवर नहीं किए जो बहुत सारे इंटरनेशनल फाइनेंशियल सर्विस सेंटर अहमदाबाद के उसके हैं, मुझे पता है उसकी हमारी प्रैक्टिस में कोई रेलिवेंट नहीं आती है बहुत ज्यादा की, और गोवा वाली बात की तो चलते चलाते बात करके जल्दी से स्किप कर दिया। सो इट इज ऑलवेज इंपॉर्टेंट टू कंसीडर व्हाट हैज टू बी सेड एंड व्हाट कैन टू बी सेड एंड फिजिकल हियरिंग एटसेट्रा ऑन दैट पार्ट। So I am of the view the faceless is going to be a challenge, but in anyhow, and now it is a buzzword, new word, which is about faceless, and let's see how it goes off and what went well. With this, friend, thanks a lot. And if you have any questions, I am available. And otherwise, thanks to Mohanji, thanks to Kila Sahab, thanks to Akshit. And I think Kila Sahab has been a very big procession, and every year he makes a call to me, and I agree making it. Mohanji has been taking a very long interest, and compliment to the Marwadi Yuva Manch, the way they have been conducting the program and they have created a family in itself. Thanks to all. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Bhai Sahab, for giving a very detailed explanation and knowledge about the budget to all of us. I have two questions. One is that client applied for VVS scheme and approved. The case was pending in High Court and now he has received a favorable order from the High Court. What to do now?
अगर फेवरेबल ऑर्डर आ गया, पैसे जमा नहीं कराए तो
पैसे जमा नहीं कराए तो
चुप होके बैठ जाए, क्या होगा?
अच्छा, अगर बीवीएस में पैसे जमा नहीं कराए तो?
हाँ, अगर जमा करा दिए तो फिर तो यू हैव नो वे आउट बिकॉज यू कांट टेक ए रिफंड।
वो सरकार के पैसे हो गए,
वो सरकार के, वो स्कीम में एक्ट में लिखा हुआ है। अगर आप सेक्शन 8 को पढ़े, अगर इफ आई एम करेक्ट सेक्शन 9 में लिखा हुआ है कि मनी वंस डिपॉजिट विल नॉट बी रिफंडेड।
ओके,
तो अगर लेकिन ये ध्यान कर लीजिए, अगर उसमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट जाएगा डिपार्टमेंट नहीं जा सकता, उसमें है क्या इतना मैटर?
अब ये तो क्वेश्चन जितना है, फिर बाद में कोई होगा तो मैं बोलूंगा आपसे डायरेक्टली बात करिए।
ठीक है, ठीक है।
अच्छा, एक क्वेश्चन और है सर कि टीडीएस का डिडक्टर ने अगर लास्ट 2 साल से रिटर्न फाइल नहीं कर रहा तो जिनका डिडक्टिव उसको कैसे पता चलेगा?
जो अभी अमेंडमेंट आई है इसके बारे में, वो जैसे बैंक में किया था लास्ट टाइम, कैश विड्रॉ करने के लिए 20 लाख से ज्यादा रिटर्न फाइल नहीं करा, टीडीएस काटेगा, तो एक यूटिलिटी अवेलेबल हो जाएगी। तो जिसका भी आप टीडीएस काटते हैं तो आपको यूटिलिटी में जाके देखना पड़ेगा कि वो रिटर्न फाइलर है या नहीं है। आपको पता लगा रिटर्न फाइल नहीं किया और उसका टीडीएस 50,000 से ज्यादा का है तो आपका डबल रेट से टीडीएस काटना पड़ेगा। वो यूटिलिटी डिपार्टमेंट अवेलेबल करा देगा, पेन चेक करके।
एक पीएफ जो 43B में है, ये अभी से आएगा या पिछले पीरियड से भी लागू होगा?
43B में डिसअलाउंस नहीं होगा, 43B में अलाउ हो जाएगा। 3615 में एम्प्लॉय का कंट्रीब्यूशन का अलाउंस नहीं होगा। और ये क्योंकि उसमें लिखा है इट इज बीइंग क्लैरिफाइड, तो ये पिछले साल से भी नहीं होगा। और मेरा सजेशन होगा कि जिनके केसेस कहीं डिस्प्यूट पड़े हैं सीआईटी अपील ट्रिब्यूनल वगैरह में, तो बेटर कोर्स विल बी टू सम विवाद से विश्वास में ले जाके इसे खत्म कर। वैसे मैं कोशिश करूंगा इंस्टीट्यूट से रिप्रेजेंटेशन लगवाने की भी, एसोचैम फिक्की वगैरह से भी, कि साहब ये 3615A को ऐसे अमेंड करेंगे तो आपका पर्पस डिफीट हो जाएगा। एक दिन का डिफॉल्ट होने के बाद एम्प्लॉयर बिल्कुल जमा ही नहीं कराएगा, फिर अपनी टाइम पे लेता रहेगा। आप इसका ड्यू डेट ऑफ फाइलिंग रिटर्न से लिंक कर दीजिए, जिससे कि दोनों को बेनिफिट हो जाएगा। टोटल डिसअलाउंस इज नॉट जस्टिफाइड।
थैंक यू सर फॉर स्पेयरिंग योर वैल्यूएबल टाइम। अब ये फिजिकल प्रोग्राम नहीं है, वर्चुअल प्रोग्राम है, तो हम वर्चुअली ही आपका धन्यवाद करना चाहेंगे। आई रिक्वेस्ट Akshay Kila and Ankit Moda, our to present a memento on Sol on virtual mode, and I request for all vote for the claps. Acceptable greeting, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
So nice of you.
Thank you.